I am live. This is great. Okay. Let me go ahead and copy this link. Control C. Patreon. Let's do chats. I got it. Here's the link. Back. Do. Hey, how y'all doing? Let me bring my mic over. I am here. Hey, can y'all hear me good? Can y'all hear me okay? Hi. So the light is a little wonky. Let me see what I can do to fix that part. Here's something. This is good. Lovely. And this week you can see me. Yay. This is pretty cool. Last week, I don't know what was going on, and I don't know what's going on this time. I'm not used to going live on YouTube at all. It's a little bit different than all the other platforms that you can go live on. You know what I mean? I'm just so used to plug and play, go ahead. You know what I mean? I'm so used to like 2 buttons to go live and then you're good. Did I not plug this in? Hey. Okay. Did I not plug this in? Okay. I don't know. Let's see if we can. How y'all doing? Y'all all right? Let me see if we can I'm trying to get my light like behind. Oh my God, that's so much better. Now if I can just sit it down. Beautiful. Let me see if we can just like, yes, that's way better. And maybe, and that light is really giving me some competing light in the background. But right now, this is good because I just want to sit and talk to y'all because it has been a while. I don't think we did live last week. Yeah, we didn't do live last week. And I think the lesson was either a little late or I haven't even uploaded it yet. You saved me from binge watching Harry Potter. Mute it. You can just have it muted in the background. I have basketball muted in the background right now. Let me grab my iPad. Here we go. Hopefully, if this is all charged up, I can at least have like the lessons that I'm gonna like 100% go through today. I haven't even, I'm still editing this week's audio lesson. African Americans, the same class format, blah, blah, blah. So this is for beautiful. Okay. All right. So this week we were, no, let me cancel. No, I do not want to leave. Okay. So this week, what we were supposed to read for this week, well, watch the crash course on the Dred Scott decision, the secret group that planned an insurrection against slavery. That one was pretty cool. I had a TikTok about the 1830s, so we were supposed to watch that. This was a pretty heavy week material wise. It was 3 videos, 2 readings, and 2 things to just kind of look at from some museum archives. And let me bring the mic a little bit closer, because this is also available afterwards, like directly on my YouTube channel. And last time the audio was like okay, but I wanted it to be like a little bit better. Anyway, can I still see y'all comments? Yeah. Hello. Hi. Discussion too. Let me make sure I posted that everywhere. That's posted. And you know what? Why not? Why not go live on TikTok too? Let's see if I can do it. Is the link opening for everyone? Hello. Hi. Let me share the link another time. Yes, y'all, hit the like button, hit the like button, hit the share button, all those things. Control C. And then I realized that I can just schedule these out. Because YouTube Live is a little more involved. The upside to that is being able to schedule them out like however long at a time. Hey, Nikki, you made it. Hey. Let me see. Can I go live on TikTok too? That would be crazy. I'll go after this. I'll focus on y'all first because y'all like in the class on Patreon for real. So, how many of us got through even some of the materials for this week? Because I know that this week was really heavy as far as like assignment wise, like stuff to look at, read, and watch. But y'all, that is because I'm probably gonna have to do a couple of extra side quests. Ooh, I can make the chat. You know what, Crystal, I'm absolutely gonna do that because the YouTube comments, as we discussed last time, the YouTube comments are nuts. So I can only imagine if a live where I am talking about slavery and African American history finds the wrong side of YouTube, I can only imagine what the comments will be like. So the comments will definitely be like subscribers only. Yay, we got through some. We got through all. Great. Yes, because avoiding the trolls is going to be avoiding the trolls for me these last couple of months has been a little harder than usual. And I think that might be because I am putting out more content. I think that it's also because of how emboldened a lot of the trolls feel now that, Trump and Elon are the puppets of the White House, so it's like they feel like extra, extra bold. Also, um, time is such a wild concept to me. And it's something that a lot of people don't consider as much when they think about the moment that we're living in. So, what's particularly scary about this iteration of like Trump craziness is that this is the second go round. So, we have had 10 years of this at that point, and time moves so fast. But the trolls started feeling extra bold in 2015 when Trump got up, was on the news talking about fake news and Mexicans being rapists and all of that stuff. I mean, we're 10 years in. So think, if you were in high school when Donald Trump was elected, if you were 17 when Donald Trump was first elected, you almost 30 now. That's a long time to have that kind of hate and antagonizing minorities and all of that stuff. That's a long time to have that in your face directly as something that's acceptable to do. My little cousins, you heard, if you listen to lesson 2, you heard one of them bust in and ask me to get her Uber to the store to get snacks. um but they are 6. She would say 7, Jamila. I'm gonna be 7 March 19th. So 7, 17, and 15. They've never known a non-Trump era, because even when Biden was president these last 4 years, Donald Trump was still very much in the news, and the trolls were still very much like, let's go, Brandon. They don't remember a time when the political climate, the internet climate, was not like this. So the timing, I think, is also something that people really got to keep in mind. And so the trolls have had 10 years to refine their tactics. They really have. It's unreal. It's truly unreal. Yeah, that's been your only political reference point. That's been your only reference point. I mean, I had to explain to my little village children that it didn't used to always be this way. Like, yeah, Republicans were always the conservative, and we always kind of knew what that meant. But as far as like the emboldened trolls, I mean, just saying slurs on the House floor, on the Senate floor, that was not. I mean, I had to tell them that didn't always happen. I had to tell them that didn't always happen. I had to show them the video of John McCain in 2007, 2000. The election season would have been 2008 or something like that. When John McCain is at a rally and a woman grabs the microphone to ask a question. And do y'all remember that? And she says, I'm scared of Barack Obama because he's an Arab. And John McCain takes the mic out of her hand and is like, we're not going to do that. Like, he literally stops her from asking the question. And now, as an adult, I'm like, all right, you could have did a little bit better, because he was like, no, he's not an Arab. He's a good person. I'm like, wait a minute. So it's like, wait a minute. But I mean, for an old guy, for an old white man in 2008, he did okay in that moment. Like, he took the mic out of her hand. He didn't even let her finish asking the question and said, no, he's a family man. I know him. I know his wife and his children. He's a good, solid person. We just have different ideas about how to get things done. Anyone younger, their age and younger, does not remember a political time that was not chaotic like this. It seems like 1,000 years ago. Yeah, he didn't play with the, now, staunch conservative, but when I tell you what I can respect at least is he fought his battles on the house floor. He fought his battle in the booth. He fought his battle in the boxing ring. He didn't have time to be outside on news channels, on blogs, and being racist out loud. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't do all that. He didn't make a spectacle of all of that. You know what I mean? Like, very flawed ideas about a lot of things. But I still believe that that's fundamentally different than getting on CNN and saying Mexicans are murderers and rapists and they bring crime to America. That's something fundamentally different. I mean, we could have had Al Gore. Truly, truly, we could have had Al Gore. Shout out to Al Gore, because that climate change documentary was just the beginning, and it's a lot of folks that need to watch it again. Okay, I can keep yapping. Truly, truly, truly. Shout out some things that y'all have questions about, or just some things that y'all noticed from this week's readings and things. Yeah, they handled their business on policy. Like, they stood on business in the booth. They stood on business in the boxing ring. Like, truly, that's what they did. Presidents used to respect the Constitution. Yes. We used to have, and I really do believe that we are in a fundamentally different moment. Like, I'm 33 years old. Conservatives have been the party of like deep prejudice my whole life, right? So that, but we are I do believe that we're in a fundamentally different place now. Truly, we are. Why am I holding my lip gloss like a cigarette? Hold on. Don't smoke cigarettes, cool kids. I mean, I ain't judging for what you do. We do what we do to get through these times, but I don't know. I'm a child of the 90s, and that also means that I have to tell you to not smoke cigarettes, because that's what everybody told me. Like, I was brainwashed into like don't ever smoke a cigarette ever in your life, even though like you should. You know what I mean? Anyway, whatever. It's going to take a long time. Truly, truly, truly. Truly, truly. On the trafficking humans across the globe. Yes. And that's really good. Let's start there, actually. So what I want to do with this class, and what I really want to do, particularly with these next few lessons, as we really get into the nitty gritty and talk about slavery and the period of Reconstruction after that, is I want us to really start putting things in perspective, as far as what that was, and even grasping just a tiny bit of what that was like. So I do see slavery as one of the biggest human trafficking projects in the history of the globe. And when you have a conversation about slavery that names it as human trafficking, then what? What kinds of questions do you ask? What kinds of research are you able to do? How do you look at certain sources differently? Do you look at sources differently, right? The story of Nat, it feels totally different. So the story of Nat Turner, right? Nat Turner, we didn't talk directly about Nat Turner's story. That's another side quest, though. I'm building that out now. But Nat Turner, let me know in the comments if you know anything about Nat Turner. If they told us about the law they were talking about. Yeah, they don't. There's so many things that we don't know. To catch up after tonight's session, how do we access the past assignments? So in the syllabus, they're all linked there. I go week by week. And every week has its own page for like what we need to be doing. And so if you go there, the week of February 11th, because class, we do a recorded lecture on Tuesday. I'm still working on this Tuesday. It's like grief is a bitch, y'all. And then live on Thursday. And then we're supposed to do like a wind down live on Sunday. And I genuinely want to start doing those. Yeah. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are like absolutely, for sure. Yes. So thank you. So was he really eating? Yes. Yeah. All right. So Nat Turner, real quick side quest then, and I will make a note to make that like a full side quest. Nat Turner led a rebellion across the southeast, well, down the southeast, right around the time that we're talking about now in the 1830s. He saw what we now believe to be an eclipse in the sky. And he saw that eclipse, and he said that God told him that he needed to take drastic measures in order to free his people from slavery. And so he gathered um, a bunch of other enslaved people and some freed people, and they went through this town in Virginia, and they, like 50 or 60 white people, and their goal was quite literally to go to every plantation, the slave owners, their families, and literally set all the black people free and come down throughout the South until they had just finished it, right? He was snitched on. Yes, he was snitched on. And we still don't really know how that happened, like the intricacies of how that happened. And it's been dramatized in movies and plays different types of ways. Like there's like this sellout who runs and tells Massa what's about to happen, right? But we do know that part of his plan definitely worked. So, however the snitching happened, it didn't happen in time to like keep him from starting to carry out the plan. What we think happened, and we being like the we of the historians, is what we think happened is that white folks, of course, panicked, right? And started to intimidate and retaliate against any black person that they saw. And that therefore scared a lot of the enslaved people into just telling whatever information that they could, because they didn't have anything to do with the rebellion, but they were being killed and punished and given extra workloads and being retaliated against in that way. And yes, he was captured. Yes, he was hanged for treason, him and a couple of other people. And yes, he was eaten. Yes, that is a thing. That is the thing. Cannibalizing enslaved people and black people specifically, like, was a thing. And that's one of those things that, of course, you have to do true deep dives. You know what I mean? Like, I actually don't expect folks to just kind of learn that on their own, right? Absolutely, it tracks, right? He does. Absolutely horrific. Yes. But something that I did have us look at in this week's lesson is actually, and if you have time, just peruse every as much as you can, or do your own rabbit hole dive into the archives, the digital archives of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC. A lot of the sources, the museum sources that I pull from, are from that museum. They've made so many of their artifacts and their exhibitions 100%, like, what do you call that, like, no, royalty free, like you can use them without like paying the museum and stuff like that. Open access, yes. Open access, yes. So the National the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And there's a link to those digital archives in the syllabus as well. Well, it's actually in the course materials. There's a link to that. I hope so too. This was before the British elite. Yes, a tiny bit before. It's actually, part of it is actually all happening like at the same time, right? So we're talking about like the early to mid 1800s, right? So in the early to mid 1800s, slavery is in full swing. I mean, all of the horrors of slavery. I mean, it is a well-oiled machine at this time, because the stolen United States is 200 years in. It's 200 years into slavery at this point, right? And so it's a well-oiled machine. And then Britain outlaws the slave trade. right? So when we were talking about the transatlantic slave trade last class, the triangular trade that was basically Britain to Africa to North and South America to the stolen United States, that triangular trade piece, Britain, the Royal African Company, which is one of the biggest slave trading companies, they shut down, and Britain outlawed slavery. All right, but by that time, the U.S. is like, that's nice and everything, but slavery is literally the backbone of our economy and who we are as a country. So we're going to keep on doing that, actually. And what we don't learn about is the domestic slave trade, which is the human trafficking project that happened within the United States, and that you had people trafficked throughout the North, throughout the South, um, to work as slaves, right? But within the United States. So you had plantations. These are like the large plantations of cotton, sugar, indigo, all of these things, and these kind of trade routes, right? Like the trade routes that you learn about in elementary or maybe in middle school, right? Where you learn about what imports are and what exports are. And you might even have looked at a map of the United States, and then they had a little icon of like, what state exports the most this, right? Georgia, it's peaches and peanuts, and Florida, it's oranges, and like all of that stuff. Idaho, it's potatoes. Yeah, by the mid 1800s, Virginia's biggest export was human beings. One more time. By the mid 1800s, really early to mid 1800s, Virginia's biggest export, far and away, was enslaved people. Yeah. Let's look at the comments. The farms. Yes. Okay. So something else. Um, George Washington. Okay, I also got to do a side quest of George Washington and that little slave girl that he could never track down. Oh my God, the obsession, the obsession. I keep forgetting her name, but she was enslaved by George and Martha Washington, and she escaped to freedom once she learned that she was going to be basically sold to Martha Washington's sister. And so she escaped rather than be sold again. And George Washington said, how ungrateful. We treated her so nicely. She can't just run away. Find her. And like he went on this years long journey to find her and never did. He was great. Oh my God. To complete rebrand. Oh yeah, they had to do a complete rebrand. A complete rebrand. So in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, I've been there twice. Nat Turner's Bible is there. And there's so many artifacts like that. There are so many love that for her, right? There are so many artifacts like that. Harriet Tubman's shawl, Queen Elizabeth, because they're alive at the same time, or Queen Elizabeth mama, so like the Queen Elizabeth Senior, I guess, gifted. Is that? Let me not lie to y'all, but somebody, whoever that was in the British royal family at the time that Harriet Tubman was alive, gifted her a shawl. Gifted Harriet Tubman a shawl, and Harriet Tubman's shawl, that gift, is in the National Museum of African American History, right, in DC. And the reason why I want us to keep taking a look at those artifacts and take a look at the items that are in that museum is because they're there. They're there, you know? We're not talking about Pompeii, right? Like the mountain that erupted and the town that was basically covered in volcanic ash, and we can see things that are from thousands and thousands of years ago, right? Because they were literally preserved through the like volcanic ash process. We're not talking about fossilized bones of dinosaurs from millions and millions of years ago. No, a shawl, a lace shawl is still available for you to go and see and look at, and it's Harriet Tubman's. When the narrative that is crafted is that it was so long ago that it's not even worth talking about anymore, because you can't touch it, because it's a time period so far back that you can't even touch it. So it doesn't, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. You can go and look at Harriet Tubman shawl. You can go look at it. Like, I saw it with my eyes. You can go and look at Nat Turner's Bible. I saw it with my eyes, right? Like, you can go and actually look at these things. And I want us to really keep that perspective in mind as we go through this class, because the narrative is that was too long ago for us to be spending so much time on, right? Even though, mind you, millions of years ago, dinosaurs walked this earth, and we're still studying them. We're still fascinated. We're still like, oh my goodness, you found a fossilized tooth of some Velociraptor Rex from years and years and years ago, right? We understand the significance of that. We're still asking paleontologists, and they're still asking questions that are relevant to today, right? Like, we understand then that millions of years ago, things that happened millions of years ago can still be affecting us right now, right? Because, oh my goodness, what was the climate like then? What was the climate like that could make this species of dinosaur survive and this species of dinosaur not, right? We know that birds are dinosaurs, like literal dinosaurs. When the Big Bang happened and a meteor came, plowed into the earth, and wiped out all the dinosaurs, there was one brand of dinosaur that lived, because it could, not only could it live because it could fly, but because they were able to incubate and develop inside of an egg. Birds are dinosaurs, and they are the last descendants of the dinosaurs. And we know that because we can connect millions of years ago to right now. But when we talk about American slavery, all of a sudden it's so cloudy and muddy, and there's really no way to know if it actually happened or not. Bruh, I can look at it like I'm looking at it, right? Ostriches are absolutely dinosaurs. Ostrich, emu, that dinosaur looking bird, that dodo bird that be in the zoo and makes that weird noise. They're dinosaurs. They're dinosaurs, absolutely. The Roman Empire. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. I taught rhetoric and composition to college students for a long time, and the tagline for that class was "Everything's trying to tell you something." And we went through an entire unit of black and white photos that were not actually in black and white, that were not taken in black and white. Like, what? So why do we see these photos only in black and white? Because they want you to associate it with a time so long ago that you can't even touch it, and a time so long ago that we must not have enough information to really be able to tell what really happened. No, you can go look at Nat Turner's Bible. One of the readings this week was an excerpt from the life of Olaudah Equiano. I think I have that book. Hold on, just chill. Where is it at? I just looked at it. Oh my god, I see it. It's literally the last book on the shelf. Hold on. I got it. I can do it. Got it. Yeah. The interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano. So I had an excerpt of this assigned to us to read, and Olaudah Equiano was an enslaved man who was freed and then wrote a narrative of his life story. His life story has been contested by historians. Some pieces of his story are contested historically, like, oh, well, he said that he came over here from a slave ship, but we have record of him actually being born in North Carolina, or these sorts of things. And pieces of it are contested in that way. The fact that I ain't finna do all that. Because at the end of the day, even if that's not his story, it's somebody's, right? Yes, they can tell. Yes, 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 yes. And you can quite literally read it. You know what I mean? Like, you can quite literally read the narrative of what life was like in the plantation South. Not romanticized narratives, but actual narratives of what life for enslaved people was like, right? Oh, speaking of, oh, great, I'm glad. Right. I didn't assign anything out of this book because I quite literally don't know if you can still like just go get it. But this book is called Black Slave Narratives: Life Under Slavery as Told by Its Victims in America, the most extensive collection available in paperback, right? This book, God, where did I get this from? I don't know. But it belonged to a man named William T. Harris, and he got it at Cornell on November 3rd, 1973. Ah, can you see it? Can I do? Damn it! How do the YouTube girlies do that? Is it? I don't know. Period. See? Yeah. But the fact that you can do but the fact that you can just the fact that you can just look at this, right? That it's like I'm looking at it. It's like, don't let nobody gaslight you into thinking that the reason why we don't know about slavery is because there's just not enough. How could we know? It was so long ago. Absolutely not. Like, it's literally like, it's right here. It's literally right here. The People's History of the United States is a really good one. It's a really, really good one. They probably don't like that he spoke and wrote so eloquently. Look. Slave narratives were, in the beginning, very contested. And white people did contest the truthfulness of the slave narratives of formerly and currently enslaved people for that very reason. Because to eloquently write, to eloquently remember your story and articulate it and write it down, you can't have that, because that means that you're a human just like them. Can't have that. So that's another reason why there's like this massive denial of very basic facts of enslaved life, right? Yes, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl is something that I have taught, that I've read multiple times. I know I have a copy here somewhere. And Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, that's something, I know that that's one that's easily accessible for, if not free, then very cheap. Like, you can find it at thrift stores, you can find it on thrift books, and like for like very like low amounts, right? So it's a story of a lady named Harriet Jacobs. I used to teach it alongside the Diary of Anne Frank, right? Because they are both, well, Anne Frank is a girl, and Harriet Jacobs is a woman, but they are both hiding in closets, They're both hiding in attics. They're both hiding in attics, from one from the Nazis and one from her slave owner slash father of her children. Right. Harriet Jacobs' story is always particularly jarring to me because of the small space that she hid in for 7 years, right? So she hid in an attic, but not what you would think of an attic. It's really more of like the crawl space in the attic that's like the void in the void in the beams when the roof comes together. Like that. That's where Harriet Jacobs hid for 7. Holy hell. Yes. Like if you were to actually measure it out, it's about the size of a parking space. Yeah. So kidnapped so many people. So many people. Let me see, because I know we have, let's talk about some of the ways. And I'm editing this week's lesson. Thank y'all so much for being patient with me, because grief like hits you in the face. Grief really does hit you in the face. If you haven't listened or kept up with the lessons and everything, which is totally fine, I lost a friend in the plane crash in DC. And this work is particularly hard in this moment because she would love it. She would love it so she would love it so bad. Like she would be in the comments, she would be in this live, like she would be trying to figure out like how to teach it in schools and prisons, and like she would be really like she would be really down for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Thank you. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Um and it's been really interesting because I I've lost people before, but I have not lost people in this very public, very, very like viral kind of way, right? So it's like every time I scrolled for like 2 or 3 days, that was all I was seeing. And I was just like, oh my God, like y'all talking about like what could have happened to my friend. Like this is actually very distressing. Like, what the hell, right? Like, what the hell are you talking about? And also like, do military planes just crash? Like, do they just do that? Like, does that just happen? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, these families and these people, these are real people and real families that are going to want closure and deserve to know. No, the answer is no. Okay. that deserve to know what happened to their loved ones, right? They deserve to know that. They deserve to know that. Like his family deserves to know what happened. Right? Like they deserve to know what happened, you know? So yeah, we're just waiting for answers. And of course, because the story is so viral and tragic and popular, her service is going to be in a basically amphitheater in Wichita next weekend. Yeah. So that is, and of course, I'm not getting on a plane to go. I'm already terrified to fly. So I'm probably people, of course, are going to be doing, all the people that knew her are going to be in different places doing all kinds of things. So I know that I'll be doing something special next weekend for her. So yeah, thank y'all. Thank y'all for all that is to say that this week's actual like audio lesson, I'm still editing it, right? But yeah, so we've gone through the life of Olaudah Equiano. We've gone through Nat Turner's Bible. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how slavery was locked in the way it was, right? Because the perspective that I also want us to really, really make sure we take away from this class is how intentional this shit was, right? Like how deeply intentional this was. The mechanics of American slavery were very intentional. And we are not talking about a couple of white people who were mean to a couple of black people, or everything was fine in the United States and in the colonies, except for this one region in the South where white people farmed crops and didn't pay the black workers, right? Like this isn't what we're talking about. We are talking about a mass human trafficking event that is very calculated, very transactional. And thank y'all so much for the condolences and the peace and love. I feel it like from the screen. Very intentional and encoded in the law, right? Encoded in the law, and encoded in the law based specifically on race. So there are some things that make American slavery uniquely different. And one of the myths of slavery, one of the things that you'll still hear people talk about slavery is that US slavery is not special because slavery happened all over the world. Africans enslaved other Africans, and what do they call it? The slave trade in Sudan is still going on, and the Arab slave trade is still happening. And yes, those things are true, but true to the point where there was nothing uniquely different about US slavery? Oh, absolutely not. Right. US slavery was codified within the law, right? It was codified within the law based on race. The transport does make it stand out. So there were other slave trades, right? There were other slave trades throughout different countries throughout the globe, different continents throughout the globe. But as far as the scale, the transatlantic slave trade was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. We're talking millions of people. We are talking for a period of time that no one had ever seen before, right? So that's one. Number two, it was codified within the law in the United States that slavery was based on race, right? So by the 1700s, slavery based on race was the law. That was the black and white US law, well, colonial law at the time, right? If you were black, you were a slave. That is it. If you were black, you were a slave for life. That's it, period, point blank, right? In the late 1600s, we also have a law that says that the slave status of a person follows their mother, right? So if your mother was a slave, then you are a slave. And the wheels start to turn, and it gets real sick real fast when you start to think of why the colonies would want to do that, right? Yeah. Because then someone says, okay, well, what if my father's white? Nope. Your mom is black. And so slavery follows the mother. Yes, slavery being passed down through heritage, right? Slavery being lifelong, right, was also something that was uniquely different, right? Because something that we also might learn in American schools is the concept called indentured servitude. And what we learn is that for whatever reason, due to poverty, usually to settle a debt, someone would work for someone else for a specified period of time, usually anywhere from 7 to 10, maybe 12 years, either to settle a debt or to serve out some type of what we would now know to be like a prison sentence, right? But there was a finite end to working without pay. There was a finite end for that for white people, right? The transatlantic slave trade, the sheer scale of the transatlantic slave trade is number one, right? Slavery being codified in law based on race is number two, right? Slavery being inherited is number three, right? Those guarantee that slavery is a generational system that guaranteed hundreds of years of automatic forced labor of anyone black, of anyone who was born black. Which means don't let anyone tell you that reparations is too complicated. Because if anyone were to ask me, well, how would reparations work? How would we decide who gets reparations? The same way you decided who was a slave. You can assume, you can make a heavy assumption that if you are a Black American in the United States and your grandmother was a Black American, if your grandmother is Black, 9 times out of 10, and quite literally 9 times out of 10, like in the 90th percentile of chances, you are a descendant of an enslaved person. You are a descendant of chattel slavery, right? So what's the problem? How come it don't work? How come it don't work backwards? It worked forwards. For literal centuries, you decided that slavery was based on who your mother was. So how come reparations can't be? And that would quite literally address the issue. Well, there's people from all different cultures now, and so does a person who's an African but an immigrant? No, no, because the same rule that had you deciding who could be enslaved would easily have you decide would easily decide who's entitled to reparations. DNA does not lie. Because she wasn't true, right? Because then we have the one drop rule, right? Which is a way to keep categorizing people as Black. That's what that was meant to do. It was meant to keep categorizing people as Black. So, okay, well, what if my grandma's Black, but my mom is white and my dad is Black? And so I don't look fully white, but I'm like a quarter Black. That is how we got the one drop rule. Because as the racial makeup of America started to change because of how often white slave masters were assaulting enslaved women, it got a lot more complicated than just if your mom was Black. So basically, if we can trace a Black woman anywhere in your heritage, you are Black, and therefore you are enslaved, right? Codified within the law. And there is one more thing. Well, there's multiple things, so I'm not even gonna say one more thing. It's not just about what this country chose to do. It's about what they chose to not do, right? And reading the Declaration of Independence, knowing that all of those men owned people at some point in their lives is nuts. It's nuts. It's truly mind-boggling. It's truly mind-boggling, right? We were assigned the Declaration of Independence this week. And really, I wasn't expecting everybody to read the whole thing because we know what it is, right? It's just like, oh, we hold these truths, this is whatever. You know the thing. It's like knowing that was happening, like as enslaved people was making their food and taking care of their daily business while they were writing those documents, so that they could have the time to write the documents that would free themselves from British rule. Nuts. Truly, it's nuts. The same, it's crazy. And having babies by them enslaved people. Didn't even consider enslaved people human, but talked all that cash money shit about freedom from other people. It's like, no, you had enslaved people working your land so that you could have the time to create a document that claimed that you were free from British. I tell you, how warped does your mind have to be truly to justify that? The dissonance, the cognitive dissonance, and that's what we mean by cognitive dissonance. Like you can see this in your face, but rather than recognize that it's true, you just kind of leave it there and go, what? No, of course not. Huh? No, of course not. Of course not. Right? I'm a Trump supporter who's going to talk about how much I hate immigrants because immigrants are going to control, they're going to take over our country. Well, hey, did you know that there's a South African man who has access to your social security number right now? What? No. It's like the dissonance, right? You have created a mental distance between what you think and what the reality actually is so that you don't have to merge the two. And so when people say cognitive dissonance, like I think we've just kind of started saying that to the point where we don't even really sit with what it means. Like it is you choosing to create distance between your mind, between what you think and the reality so that you don't have to merge the two together and sit with how contradictory those two things might be. Right? Like it's just nuts. Yeah, let's look up this Declaration of Independence real quick. Let's just kind of see. Child. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So basically, we are at the point where we're separated from y'all and we're going to lay out the reasons. Right? Like true. The dissonance. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whatever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Like, bruh, mental gymnastics. They knew what they were doing was wrong. Crazy. It's like, listen, one more time, because it's nuts. It's nuts. Read it. Like, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Y'all. Comedy. In 1776, mind you, African Americans would not be legally free in those. What now? At that time, I don't know how many states were how many states were states at the time of the Civil War, but we got almost 100 years of slavery of African Americans left. Oh, they don't want us reading. Absolutely, absolutely, they don't want us reading that now. They don't want the Palestinian people to read that now. They don't want. They don't want Sudan. They don't want nobody reading that right now. They truly just altered their definitions. Right, right. We will just alter the definition of who is a human being and who is not. Perfect dissonance. Great. So to sit with the intentionality of what that was intentional, deeply intentional. And it is something that made the United States particularly unique in the way that they enforced American slavery. If you follow me on TikTok, I've said this a couple times, but perspective, I'll keep saying it because perspective really does matter. By 1860, there were 4 million enslaved people in the United States. At one point, enslaved people in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Georgia, outnumbered free people, right? Which enter the 3/5 compromise. So you have 4 million people. Just to give you an idea of what 4 million people is. Yes, there were 4 million enslaved people in the United States by 1860. 4 million, right? Now, mind you, we're well past the outlawing of the British slave trade. So this is the result of the domestic slave trade, the back and forth human trafficking. Right. How many free? The numbers are. Don't get me lying about the ratio. I forget the ratio. In some states, so in Mississippi, I do believe. Let me look that up real quick. Um, South Carolina and Mississippi, slaved outnumbered free persons. They don't give us an exact number. Come on now. They do not give us an exact number. I wonder why. I'm gonna find it. Y'all gonna find it. So yeah, we have 4 million enslaved people in the United States. In South Carolina and Mississippi, the enslaved population outnumbers the free population. Just to give you an idea, everybody working for Walmart, everybody working for Amazon, that's still nowhere near 4 million people. Everyone working for Walmart, everyone working for Amazon, and everyone working for McDonald's, that is still not 4 million people. You can get close to 4 million people by adding up everyone who worked for Walmart, everyone who works for Amazon, everyone who works for McDonald's, and everyone who works for the post office. You would get close to 4 million people. So imagine if everybody, and this is in the US, if everybody who worked at Walmart, everyone who worked at Amazon, everyone who worked at McDonald's, and everyone who worked at the post office did not get paid by 1860. So we're like on the cusp of the Civil War. By 1860, there are 4 million enslaved people in the United States. So you would have to add up Amazon, Walmart, McDonald's, and the post office, like USPS, the drivers, the people who sort the mail, everybody. And you still don't get to 4 million people. You get close. But imagine if all of those people did not get paid, never got paid, like since their inception. Because none of those entities have been around as long as slavery was around. None of those entities have been around for as long as slavery was around. We won't get to I think it's the year 2111. Yeah. If they worked until 2111, all those people worked for free until the year 2111. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Because I really try to get that number in perspective, right? Particularly when we're talking about labor, when we're talking about work. Every person who works in every school district in this country is nowhere near 4 million people. Teachers, librarians, custodians, nowhere near 4 million people. The scale of it puts it in perspective. It puts it in perspective. Nobody who works for Amazon gets paid. Nobody who works for Walmart gets paid. Nobody who works for the post office gets paid. Nobody who works for McDonald's gets paid. That is the scale of American slavery. And not only is it the scale, that's a good way to imagine the amount of production, right? That's a good way to imagine the amount of production. We're talking millions of pounds of cotton a year. We're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds of tobacco per year. We are talking so much indigo that there are still Black people. There are still Black people deep in the Gullah Geechee regions of Georgia with blue fingertips because of how much indigo was picked, because of how much indigo through enslavement, yes, through enslavement and the sharecropping generation. Yeah. Indigo stains your fingers blue. And we also only talk about cotton, right? We only talk about cotton as like the cash crop. But you had cotton, indigo, tobacco, sugar, peanuts. You know what I mean? Like these are very, very, what I want to say, like central pieces. Like it is the American economy. There are still sharecroppers now. Hopefully not. My grandmother is the first woman in my family that did not have to work land. So her mother, my great grandmother, was a sharecropper. Mm-hmm. That's just the crops. That's just the crops. Because another deep myth is that slavery was just a Southern thing, and that slavery was just about crops, and that we learn about the Industrial Revolution in school, and that basically the lie that they tell us is that the United States moved past farming as a way to make their money and started inventing metal things like trains, like trains and aluminum. And once we started manufacturing, then we didn't really need slavery as much anymore. No. The Industrial Revolution made slavery worse. Yes. Everywhere. Yeah. So, and when you think of the scale, exactly. A. Moon Johnson. Yes, there were fewer people around at the time, so comparatively, yeah, every black person you saw, you could assume they were enslaved because the law did, because the law absolutely did, absolutely did, absolutely did. So the Fugitive Slave Act, right? The Fugitive Slave Act only aided in the human trafficking of black people, because black people would absolutely be kidnapped from free states and brought back into slave states where they were legally, because they had both feet planted in a slave state, were enslaved. Truly, 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 truly horrific when you think about it. The Industrial Revolution made slavery worse. It made slavery worse. It did not make slavery obsolete. It did not make things easier for enslaved people. It made slavery worse, because when you produce more, when you can produce more faster, then you need more people to do more work in order to keep up with the means of production. Yeah.
I can fry stuff in unalive.
Yeah.
In olive oil.
I don't know if you should. I mean, you can. You can.
Okay,
not like a deep fry, like a shallow fry. My little sister, my gosh. Oh yeah, they were snatching anyone they could. They would snatch. If you ever seen that movie 12 Years a Slave, that's a true story of a man named Solomon Northrop. Yeah, he was a free man and who was literally kidnapped and sold back into slavery. Abso-freaking-lutely. So the absolute opposite. The absolute opposite. Oh yeah. Yeah. The original fit the description. Absolutely. The original fit the description. Yeah. Right. That's the unusual part. He was actually freed again. The Fugitive Slave Act incentivized kidnapping black people and bringing them to slave states. That's what it did. That's what it did. Now you did have here's probably the last thing that we'll go through today is that you did have states, some, a few, who as a whole took an anti-slavery stance. Some for moral reasons, some for economic reasons, right? There are different political aims for why someone would be anti-slavery, right? Now, being anti-slavery and being an abolitionist are two different things, right? So abolition is you believe in the immediate end of something, right? So for example, if I believe in prison abolition, I believe that prisons should not be a thing. I do not believe that prisons should be a thing and immediately prisons should be abolished. I don't need no 100-year plan. I don't need no 5-step easy phase out. Like, no. Shut all them damn things down right now, right? Abolition has an attitude of immediacy, like right now, and usually has a moral undercurrent to that. Like, no, this is wrong. And it's so wrong morally that we need to stop this shit right now. Is this what began the police force? Yes. The short answer is yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the difference. Yeah, there is a difference, right? So there are, for example, right, there are some people that are still Republicans but are anti-Trump, right? You can be anti-Trump, but that doesn't mean you're a Democrat. You just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm still concerned, but I don't like him. Like that's something different. Like he gotta go. But if he were to go tomorrow, like I would still be a gun toting conservative. He gotta go though. Right? That's the difference between being anti-slavery and being an abolitionist. Right? So there were a lot of states for whatever reason took an anti-slavery stance. You had the Quakers. The Quakers have a long history of being abolitionist specifically, right? And this is not to say that every single Quaker was an abolitionist. This is not to say that every single Quaker was an abolitionist, but as a whole, they took a stance of abolition, specifically because of their religious belief, right? They were like, well, the logical conclusion, like owning human beings is crazy. Like that's nuts. So do you want to like stop that shit? Because that's it's insane. It's insane. Like we actually like no, actually. And we actually not gonna participate in your shit because of what you're doing. Right? Something else that we're not taught about this, the perspective of slavery, right? Is that everybody was on board with it, right? Oh, that's just the way things were all the time. But we never learn about abolitionists, right? If you watched the original, not the original, the introduction to this class, the introduction video, I mentioned that there are that I do not that I allow white people in the class, that I do not say white people cannot come in here, right? And that's for a lot of reasons, but the primary reason is that white people never learned that they can be the abolitionists in the story. We don't teach white people that they can be the abolitionist in the story. You don't learn that there are anti-slavery white people. You don't learn that there are white abolitionists. You don't learn that. And the reason why you don't learn that is because you might realize that as a white person, you don't have to go along with this shit. You might realize that. You might realize that that is not just something that everyone was cool with. That you just learned that that's not necessarily, you don't learn that's you don't learn that that is something that can be. Brigham Young was super racist. I grew up in Utah and was shocked when I learned that oh yeah, Utah was a slave state. Billions with a B. Yeah, billions with a B. And so you had most people, even if they were anti-slavery, were heavily against the concept of abolition because of the billion-dollar machine that slavery had become. And so next week, when we learn about like heading into the Civil War and like getting right into the Civil War, right? I don't want people messing with that profit. Exactly. Right? It's like we literally cannot abolish slavery. Our entire nation would crumble. We cannot do that. The snowball is already headed down the hill. We can't do that. So then you end up having political parties and anti-slavery groups and abolitionist groups pop up specifically in the late 17, early 1800s, right? You have abolitionist groups pop up that start publishing writings, that start working with formerly enslaved and currently enslaved people, formerly enslaved people like Frederick Douglass, right? And helping him tell it like Alauda Equiano and helping them publish their stories and tell their stories about the horrors of slavery and about what slavery actually does in order to push the moral piece of it, right? In order to push the moral piece of it, like the moral part of this outweighs the economic benefit that we're getting. And yes, it's actually so bad that the moral wrong outweighs the billions of dollars. Like, nah, this need to happen like right now. It was too big to fail. Yeah. And white people rarely learn that you can be the abolitionist in the story, that you can be anti slavery. Well, as far as it might go, as far as, well, not all white people did that, and there's nobody alive did those horrible things. And so, right, there's like a placating of like, there were nice white people sometimes. But no, 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 no. There weren't just nice white people. There were staunch anti slavery white people. There were staunch abolition white people. Not a whole lot. But there were some. There were enough for you to know that they existed. Yeah, John Brown. John Brown stood on business, led a very similar slave revolt to Nat Turner. Absolutely. Who also said that God told him that slavery needed to end right now today. Right. You have the abolition of slavery unless you've been convicted of a crime. Yeah, we're gonna have to take a side quest on John Brown too. We're gonna have to take a side quest on John Brown too, because that's, yeah, that raid on Harper's Ferry was nuts. Hmm. Another one, I might just scan some of these things because it's too important. It's called Slavery Attacked: The Abolitionist Crusade, and it's a book that is too important. I think I have to, as I'm talking, I have to scan some of these in, because we don't learn about the abolitionist story, about the anti-slavery story, because we can't fuck up the narrative that slavery was just something that everybody went along with at the time until they didn't. We also can't fuck up the narrative that people didn't know how wrong that was. No, 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 no. Well aware. Well aware. Thomas Jefferson's diaries are wild. Read Thomas Jefferson's diaries, his journals, where he talks about knowing that slavery is wrong morally, but needing to keep enslaved people in case his checks didn't clear. Quite literally, needing to keep capital, human capital, to settle his debts in case he got too broke, but knowing that that was wrong. Oh yeah. And so stuff like the things that we were looking at this week, really put into perspective the scale of slavery, and that there were people then who were aware of that, right? One of the side quests that I often go on, as a student of history, is something called social attitudes, right? Like, so what were the attitudes towards XYZ, right? Like, it's kind of like, okay, does Beyonce know she's Beyonce? Like, does she know the impact as she's doing it? Like, did Martin Luther King, when he was marching, did he know that he was Martin Luther King? The answer is yes. Right? The answer is yes. And so I'm always fascinated by the attitudes of people at that time, right? The attitudes towards slavery, right? Did they know slavery? Yes, they did. Absolutely. Did they know how wrong? Yes, they did. Absolutely. And they did it anyway. And they did it because they knew how wrong it was, right? Because you also have people who who participated in slavery based on the abject cruelty and racism, right? Because their racism did go so deep, and their hatred for Black people did go so deep, right? It's not just about the economic impact. The cruelty is the point. The cruelty is the point. So you also might hear people talk about, in like modern discussions about slavery, is that, oh, well, enslaved people couldn't have been treated that bad, right? Because, well, logically, why would you treat an economic investment so bad? Why would you beat them, and why would you mistreat y'all? Because the cruelty is the point as well. The cruelty is the point as well. Right. Yeah, nah. People have been people with the same feelings, with the same. You've always had people with strong moral suasion. You've always had people who were very well aware of the horrors and the evils and who were actively against it, and people who were well aware of the evils and were doing it anyway. Yes, Germany. Actually, Germany. T. Martin says, I was curious about if there are countries who kind of, more than the US, reckoned with their racism to be better off now. Germany. Yeah. There are lots of people like myself who have a deep passion for rectifying the horrors of American slavery and recognizing the history and all of these things. Um, who, not to say use Germany as the example, as like the example, but definitely as a model for what it could look like. Like y'all, it's illegal. It's illegal to have copies of Mein Kampf in Germany, right? Like it's like the copies of Hitler's famous Nazi book. Like it's illegal to have copies of that. It's illegal to do a a Yahtzee salute. That's illegal in Germany. It's illegal to say or suggest that the Holocaust did not exist, that the Holocaust did not happen. It's illegal to say, you're skirting on the law if you try to argue in Germany that the Holocaust was not as bad as people think it is. Yeah, you're skirting on illegal right there. For now, right? It's illegal. Days of remembrance, apologies, reparations, and most importantly, still pursuing and prosecuting Yahtzee soldiers, generals, and participation and participants in the Holocaust of the Jewish people. Still, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they tracked a who was in his 90s at the time, but tracked a Yahtzee soldier down and tried him in court. Absolutely. Excellent classes about, yeah, they definitely know more about American propaganda than most Americans. Yes, 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 yes. So yeah, there are examples. There are models, right? There are models for rectifying this, for rectifying the horrors of American slavery. There are, just like back then there were models for abolition. There were models, there were entire political parties whose sole aim was the abolition of slavery. I don't think so either. I don't think so either, Tracy. I don't think so. I don't. The Tracy says I don't think the U.S. will ever have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I don't think so. I don't think so. There have been committees, there have been gatherings and meetings and of all sorts and task forces, but I don't think that it will materialize because of that cognitive dissonance that would have to be addressed. That would have to be addressed. You have to address that. You would have to address that, right? And you would have to address that there are people, right? Because what we also don't learn or face enough in perspective is that just as African American people are still very much suffering the effects of slavery, there are still white people who are still very much reaping the benefits of slavery, right? What was traded on the New York Stock Exchange before, like actual stocks? What's a stock? Right. So, right. New York City is New York City because of the slave trade. New York City is New York City because of the slave trade. Does Germany acknowledge? Of course they don't, Crystal. Does Germany acknowledge Namibia? No. Yeah, I was definitely on it. One of my supervisors, he was like, "Hey, you want to help me with a side project?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Yeah, you got to help me put this presentation together." I'm like, "Sure. What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I serve on a committee for the UN to help uh, push Germany to acknowledge the genocide of the Namibian people." I was like, "What? Excuse me?" Yeah, absolutely. Last questions, thoughts, concerns. I could yap about this all day. I think I might go, I might bounce over to TikTok for like 30 minutes, like literally like 30 minutes, and just be like, hey, we're over here every week. Because there's a lot of people who think that the classes are actually going to be on TikTok. And I'm like, y'all, so many people like don't like just because you still had an app on your phone, there's so many people who don't have it anymore. I can't really justify only doing it there. No. So yeah, I love it too. I love it too. It really has been, not to get all sentimental, but it really has been giving me like a reason to like just keep going and keep moving. It's in the app store, lit. Okay, cool. To just keep going and keep moving. You know. Next week we're gonna talk about the Civil War, because the Civil War is messy boots, honey. It is so messy. It is so messy. It is, oh my, the girls are fighting, honey. The girls are fighting like slavery. The girls are fighting. The girls are going back and forth in Congress. They're writing letters. They're assassinating each other. Kansas and Missouri, to this day, don't get along. To this day, their sports rivalries are based in slavery. Yeah, the sports rivalries in the Midwest are slave rivalries, are old slave rivalries, because it's messy boots. It's messy boots. Ciao. Yeah, man, the mythic past, yo. The mythic past. I really do appreciate what Jason Stanley does with that book, because he really does say it plainly. Like, they make up a past and then tell us we need to go back to something that does not exist. And that because of these liberals, because of these progressives, because the newfangled educated elites in the cities are taking over, we don't have our rural America the way it was before. Yeah, nah. Yes, I will. Yeah, we got to get into the sports thing. Oh, yeah, the rebels and the. Mm-hmm. It's so messy. And then I'm going to do another side quest. There's so many side quests, but we also have to talk about a very important piece of. We also don't really talk about that 1619 to like 1750 era of slavery, because y'all, it's nuts. Like, we don't talk about like 2 whole centuries of slavery. We don't, it's a whole 200 years that we just miss. And the way that slavery is codified into, like, baked into what America is going to be, happened between 1619 and like 1760. Truly, truly, truly. Yes. Yeah. After 1840, it makes it hard to understand the totality of it. Yeah. And it's like we really only focus, as far as teaching, on like 1850 to 1865. Like, you would really think that to go to school in the US, you would literally think that slavery was like 20 years. No, 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 no. 1619 to like 17 to like 1770. Whoo. That is when we have the rule of slavery following the mother. That is the rule. That is when we have the rule of slavery being lifelong based on race. That is when we have Black people not being able to own property. So Black people, I mean, they had that shit locked down, right? Because of course, Black people was like, well, I'll just get enough money and then buy my family, and then they can be my slaves. But like, not really. Yeah, can't do that. No, Black people cannot get married, right? So a woman can't say, I'm a lady. I am a lady. I'm a married woman, and therefore you cannot take me and force me to have kids. Nope, can't do that because Black people can't be married. Their marriages are not legally binding. Sound familiar? Right. Their marriage is not legal. All of that. Every single colony makes slavery legal and damn near unbreakable. Yeah. Slave owners will be fined. They're fined in some states, in some cities, are fined for freeing their slaves. Fined so much so that it incentivized you keeping enslaved people. Ooh, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Ooh, that's good. It's so good. Yeah, so from 1619 to 1770, we get all that. We get all of that. Yeah. 400 souls on that. Yay. We get that. We get all of that. We get that slaves cannot legally convert to Christianity. They're not. We get that you cannot legally convert to Christianity because in colonial times, right? In like civil colonial times, an enslaved person could convert to Christianity and be freed. Not Black people. Yeah, no, no. They said everybody said Black people. Black people can't do that. They don't count. No, 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 no. Black people not being allowed to read and write, like all of that happens between 1619 and like 1770. Oh yeah. It's been real, y'all. It's been real. Oh my god, it's been like an hour and a half. Oh my god, I'm so glad I got YouTube to working. Oh my goodness. Next time I'm gonna get like cute little lighting and like a fancy background. This is also really helping me like grow as like a content creator or whatever. Cause like the teaching, I got that down pat. I can do that all day, every day. But the content creating, I have been learning as I go, honey. All in cycles. Yes. So next time we will talk about, I think we're going to spend like 2 weeks on the Civil War, because also slavery is also still actively happening, like during what's it like actively happening. They're like, no, 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 slavery is not going to pause for the war. But yeah, it's nuts. It's super duper messy. All right. I'll talk to y'all later, y'all. Bye.